Hello and welcome to episode 47 of Conf T with your SE. I am your host, Brian Young. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Tom Porto. How are you, sir?
Brian, it's a beautiful, beautiful Tuesday. How are you?
You know, it's much better than the last couple days. I mean, I actually had to find my hoodie yesterday because not so much it was too cold outside. Like I've got my natural insulation, but we're going to the hockey rink, and I'm like, yeah, I better wear my hoodie. But it was cold. It was cold and dreary. I'm glad that it's nice.
We went camping. Well, I say camping. We rented a townhouse in the Adirondacks this weekend, and
Lamping.
Yeah. We were looking, looking at the weather, and it's gonna be like 45 degrees and rainy. And I'm like, all right, well, my girls have already grown out of like their winter clothing.
Yep.
So is anyone going to be selling sweatshirts at this point? So quick run to Old Navy. Old Navy always has sweatshirts for some reason. Doesn't matter what time of year. But
yeah.
So that was useful to spend that money on sweatshirts in, June, almost June.
Hey, speaking of spending money you weren't expecting, I got a good one for you. So my wife punctured her front tire like last week, and it was in the middle of the tire. I was able to plug it up. No problem. Cool. All right. $20 for the kit. Done. Over the weekend, we puncture the rear tire, same side. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And of course, now it's in the sidewall. So I've got to get a new tire. And of course, when you get one tire, you have to get a second tire. So that was how I spent my Saturday. I spent about an hour at Pep Boys getting two tires on the minivan. Yeah. While my car is still in the shop. Still in the shop.
You and cars, man.
Dude, I'm like 2 months now. I'm done. Done with cars. All right. So enough about us. We have two great guests here that are patiently waiting and trying not to laugh. I see Sean really trying hard not to burst out laughing here. Sean, we'll start with you. How you doing, Sean?
Good. And yeah, not quite laughing, just enjoying how you guys are setting the table here for the tone of the podcast.
Hey, we are professionals.
Yeah, I'm Sean, and as the topic eventually will be discussed today, I work on DNA Spaces as a product adoption specialist. So really nice to be here.
Nice. Thanks for joining us, Sean. And we also have Jake. How you doing, Jake?
Doing well.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do here at Cisco?
Yeah, so I'm a product sales specialist, and so work with customers every day on how DNA Spaces, which we'll talk much more about, can help fit location use cases that they're looking to solve for, and have the privilege of working with Sean on having customers find the most value out of it as well. So.
Nice. You say that now. You weren't saying that earlier, but that's we'll say that for the B side. So I don't know who wants to start, but I mean, DNA Space is relatively new name, but not necessarily a new product, right? And it's kind of an evolution of things. So kind of want to start with what the history of DNA Spaces is, and maybe some other names that people might recognize, but like, oh yes, that's what this is now. So I don't know, Jake or Sean, which of you want to take that?
I'll go ahead and jump in. So DNA Spaces is probably about 2.5 years old by name.
Mm-hmm.
But as you mentioned, it is kind of a long-standing evolution. So location, as it stands, is not something new to Cisco. It goes back to the MSE days, or Mobility Services Engine. And then that had kind of morphed into CMX, Connected Mobile Experiences. In parallel, there was also an offering that was called Cmx Engage. And, I think one thing that's apparent is the confusing naming standards also is not new. Cmx Engage was a different product altogether than CMX. I think the kind of common similarities between them were all taking infrastructure and the data that's coming from it to try to solve for use cases beyond connectivity. And so the issues, and I think this is an industry-wide issue that had been existent, was they were all kind of fragmented in all different silos of products. And so even apart from CMX, there was Operational Insights, there was BLE Manager, and a handful of others. They were all kind of their own niche product. There were gaps between some, there were overlaps with others, different licensing, different support models. And so it was coming up on 3 years ago exactly that Cisco made an acquisition of a company called July Systems. And the whole charter of that acquisition was to unify everything location onto one cloud platform. And so to really clean up Cisco's story internally, which would then in turn allow our customers to maximize the value out of the infrastructure that they're purchasing and to do so at scale. And that's, one term that Sean and I probably say 100 times a day when we're talking with customers is the scale capabilities that DNA Spaces now allows for compared to the predecessor products. And all while kind of really focusing in on business outcomes to be delivered on that. So apart from the speeds and feeds and connectivity, but now what else can Cisco infrastructure do to solve for some of these issues that our customers are facing?
Nice. Yeah, no, because I've dabbled with CMX in the past. Thought it was a really powerful tool. There's a bit of tracking and engagement insights built into Meraki, which we'll talk about that later. But the idea here of using your existing infrastructure to offer information, insights beyond, and even interactivity, engagement with those customers, depending on what the use case is, beyond just the infrastructure that it already gives already, right, in terms of connectivity and speeds and feeds, as you said, really just makes sense, right? We've already got the access points there. They're already throughout the location. I actually just had a conversation with my customer last week talking about the same thing. Like, hey, you've got the access points everywhere. You've already gone through site surveys. You understand where they need to be. Let's put them to use. Let's make use of the additional functionality there, whether it's Bluetooth Low Energy or just regular Wi-Fi, and just and add to it, and get more value out of the infrastructure. So, no, that's cool. Sean, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the majority of time and so I come at it from a slightly different angle than Jake, because a lot of time the folks that I'm working with, our customers, have access to DNA Spaces C as part of their DNA bundle. Generally the DNA Advantage bundle, and so a lot of times customers are really surprised and excited to see that they actually have access to this functionality. That may have not been the kind of linchpin of their DNA bundle purchase. To see that, hey, we can start to access a lot of this location data, start to have access to some of these analytics tools that then they're able to get a lot of value in. So I think sometimes we do kind of get that off factor as well, from folks who may have not realized that they have access to this technology right off the bat.
Nice. What would that look like? I mean, what is that kind of, can you give me an example? Like, what was one thing that a customer kind of came to you and was like, wow, I didn't know I had this, and what use case did it fill that they didn't even realize?
Yeah, so I think the big one, as we're living here, in the middle of 2021, is always going to be dealing with the coronavirus.
Right.
How do we work on getting our customers, our employees, whoever it might be, back in the office, back in the place of business, and doing so safely and effectively. So making sure that there aren't spaces that have too many people in them, too many clients in them at once. Thus, you're not able to social distance. Being able to monitor that pretty passively, in a way that's not taxing on resources. It's not taxing on any kind of operations manager, facilities manager, where they're sitting there like a doorman. With the little clicker like you do at the club, counting people in, counting people out.
Yep.
We're able to monitor that all from one place, and like Jake mentioned, at scale, to where now I have one place to monitor this across my 5, 6, 7 places of business, wherever they're at geographically as well.
Sean, were you a bouncer at one point? You seem to have
Yeah.
a
Well, if you guys haven't seen me in person, but my build really permits being a bouncer as I'm packing on the lbs in my later age. But yeah, I've been known to toss around a drunk man or two. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I remember, just going in and out of stores, right? Being able to, having to wait in line like at a Target or Home Depot, and there's someone with the iPad, and they're looking at that number. They're waiting for someone on the other end to, hit the number down so that they can allow occupancy. Obviously, that's a, huge retail store. They're just worried about the number of people in the entire store. But what's funny is when you were talking about that, I was thinking about to pivot this, how WebEx has been doing this for a while with the video endpoints. We've been able to do people tracking for a while as part of speaker tracking, right? Where we would physically move the camera to point at the person that was talking. And then of course, when we did that, frame it up so that the person sitting next to them wouldn't just get cut in half by the frame. They would also be framed in as well. So it would look more natural. The technology behind that was tracking faces, tracking people, tracking bodies. And, just to kind of look at the same problem from a different angle, from occupancy standpoint inside conference rooms, it was a very simple ad, and just being able to change that, that display into like a digital sign that said, hey, the capacity for this room is 9. You've got 8 people in here, and 2 more people walk in. Hey, this room is overoccupied. Please disperse. Like something along those lines. So it's funny how we found another use case out of a completely different product to be able to do kind of a very similar thing in that very exact scenario, right? Obviously, it's not going to be looking at the entrance to a retail store and doing that, but the idea is still the same, and it's interesting how COVID has brought on that extra innovation that we needed to solve these problems that came at us. Tom, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add or ask there.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say the same thing, that I kind of was following the DNA Spaces roadmap and announcements, like kind of shortly after COVID hit and started affecting everything, and it was very interesting to see how quickly that team was able to pivot and say, hey, look, this is what our product can really do and help people get back to work. And one of the ones that stuck out in my mind was especially as the government and everyone kept coming up with ways to mitigate and just kind of figure out how to deal with this whole thing. Like contact tracing, right, became the next big thing. And I know we announced, hey, look, this is a great way to keep track of, who's coming in contact with who, depending on how you've got DNA Spaces set up. I thought that was really cool. And obviously something we still offer, for people who are trying to get back to work today.
Yeah, no, good point. And I find it interesting. It's funny because I remember when I was looking at CMX, right, and looking at what we can do with it as far as in the use case I was looking at, it was my church, right? I said, hey, listen, I may have a way here to be able to count the number of people that come in without you having to. I'm like, and I was asking, how do you take attendance now? Like, how do you get an idea on the number of people in the church? And they were telling me it's usually just someone at the back of the room that's just sitting there. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and that's that's tedious. So I said, listen, I can do this with our wireless infrastructure, and not only can I tell you how many people are there, but I can tell you what percentage of them are people that have been there before, what percentage of them have never been here before. And if they connect to the wireless network and they go through the Facebook page and stuff like that, now I can start to add some demographic information so you can get an idea, what your percentages are, right? And it was an intriguing idea, but it was funny because around the same time that I was exploring that, Apple and Android were both coming out with ways to basically, the way that these work is they look at the MAC addresses, and if you never join the network, that's fine. They still see the MAC address of pinging the SSID, but they will track that and get an idea. Okay, I've seen you before. You were here last time. You hung out for like an hour, but you were here a week ago, etc. And what Apple and Android were doing was, if you didn't join the network, it would just throw out a bogus MAC address, so that every time you went back there, it was different. I was like, I wonder how do you combat privacy and then the other aspect of it, like what we can actually do. And I think it's a problem that the tech industry faces in general, right? Same thing with third party cookies and ad tracking, right? I go and I look up a product, like I was looking up some rollerblades for my son. And then afterwards, for about a month, every single site I went to had the advertisement for those rollerblades. And I'm just like, I don't need that ad tracking telling me, hey, you want to look at these again? You sure you want to look at these again? Or what's worse, after I buy it, I'm still getting ads for it afterwards. But the only way for them to be able to know, hey, I don't need to waste money on ads for this guy because he already bought it, would mean more tracking. Like they'd have to know, oh, it was this guy that bought it. So I don't need to spend money on him. I'm gonna, let someone else take that ad space. I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I think it's interesting, the kind of trade off between the benefits that you get from this type of tracking and technology, and personalization, just with ads, but the trade-off you get with privacy. So I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add to that one.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting too, the kind of point that you brought up with your church as well, because I think that there are times when I'll meet with a customer or even someone who's worked with Jake in the past, and they'll say, hey, this is a problem that we're actively looking to solve. This is something that has been impacting our business. We need to get people back in the office. We need to get customers back in the office, or we need to deploy a contact tracing solution, whatever it might be. And on the flip side, there are some people that thought to themselves, like, man, I didn't even know that this kind of a thing existed. And maybe it's not something that we're going to look at deploying this week or next week. But it's awesome to know that, we can, with almost like a flip of a switch, I'd say that, 40 minutes or so, you can actually get this thing up and running and start seeing some useful data pouring in. So I think timing is a big component of it as well. But like I said, the fact that folks know that they have this at their fingertips is a big value add for them.
Did I hear you right? Did you call it data porn, or did you say data pouring in? Because I swear I heard data porn.
Whatever floats your boat, Brian. I don't know.
I think I heard it. I heard it too. But
okay, I was like, he said data porn, right? Okay, that's fine. Hey, you know what? Whatever.
It depends how much you like data, I guess, Brian.
Hey, I mean, it's whatever. All right.
Yeah, I did say data pouring in.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
All right.
Maybe slurred a little bit.
All right, there, Jake. I don't know how you top that one.
Yeah, tough coming back from that. I think a couple things, and you brought up a lot of good points there. In talking through the church example and kind of how the need for this data has evolved, right? And so going back, it's probably like 5 or 6 years ago or so, the overall statement was made by a chief marketing officer of a big sporting goods store that we were working with. And they said, we know more about the people at home on our website than we do when they walk into our store. And I think that same principle applies even like for employees in an office building or students on a university, healthcare, really across all different verticals, is that the behavior within 4 walls really became that of a ghost. And that's where then Cisco infrastructure comes in, and so much data and so many different breadcrumbs on how that space is being utilized can be gleaned and can be understood. Now you bring up the question about privacy. I think that's where it now gets to, how is the data handled? How is it secured? There are regulations country by country in terms of how that data must be transferred and secured. So many protocols in there. And then that's also where, again, the scale piece of this comes up. One of the major advantages I think that Cisco and DNA Spaces has is that we're deployed over 1.5 million access points that are on DNA Spaces today. And so it's not some boutique niche vendor that was spun up overnight because of COVID, and now we're trying to figure out how to handle all of this absolutely critical data on employees and how many people are on a floor. But it's a platform that is built to ingest this data the right way, with the right security and privacy in mind. And then, that's everything we can control from the product perspective. And we can work with our customers on how that fits into their policies and their processes as well. But we can instill the confidence that the data is secured and handled the way it needs to be.
No, that's great. I mean, and that's what it boils down to, right? Like the average consumer, I think, doesn't necessarily dive that deep and be like, well, it's okay if you track me as long as the information is, housed in redundant data centers only in the US, blah, 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 blah. Right. But at the same time, those are the requirements that an IT team need. And, and the entire organization is going to rely on, right? Because it'll tarnish their reputation if that information gets out. Right. I think there's a kind of a, I don't want to say coming to Jesus moment, because I don't think that translates in all the countries that this broadcasts in, but I think that there's definitely a coming to realization moment where, like, the general public is realizing that there's a lot of information that they are putting out there, whether it's surfing the internet, walking by stores, whatever. But I think they feel almost slighted because they don't know about it, kind of thing. I don't know. it's always a weird conversation when you talk about privacy, because you get additional benefits by having that information available to, the Googles, the Ciscos, the whoever, right? You get additional information and personalization if you're exposing that information. But at the end of the day, it's the vendor's responsibility to keep that information private, keep it protected. And that's where, of course, because we have that entire solution, it's just a cloud SaaS solution, right? All those protections and rights are there. Who just wanted to come and say hi there, Sean? That's a first.
Yeah, I tried to move him away from the camera, but yeah, that's my cat Mojo. He wanted to say what's
Hey,
up.
Mojo. For those who have not discovered yet that we're on YouTube, you may want to join us on YouTube now. Yeah, just a little plug there. But yeah, normally this is an audio only
like,
podcast,
comment, and subscribe, please.
Yes, like, comment, and subscribe. I tell you, I should get my son to do that. Every time he records anything, he's like, "Welcome to my video. Please like, comment, and subscribe." I'm like, dude, you're not even uploading this to YouTube. What are you doing? Anyways, all right, off the train here, but that's fine. So
yeah, I can if you want to get cat lovers to subscribe, we can have a little segment.
Hey, they say that's a great marketing thing, right? I mean, they say it's all about cats. So I think we just that's it, perfect. 100,000 subscribers.
Episode 47. It's all about cats.
I'll put that in the subtitle for anyone who I don't even know what those are. Anyway, people tracking, we've really kind of discussed, I think, at length. Before we move on to the next piece, is there anything either of you guys want to add to that?
Nothing off the top of my head. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just want to give you guys the opportunity. So the other piece that we can do besides people tracking with their personal devices or with a little BLE badge here, which again, for those on the YouTube channel, you're gonna like this. So this is a BLE token. This could be used for asset tracking too, but this is a little BLE token that gets stuck onto a badge here. This is used in conjunction with the access points and DNA spaces for tracking. And so let's go into the asset tracking piece of this, right? So people tracking with their personal devices, asset tracking with something like a BLE token, something, a little bit more powerful, more robust, more environmentally able to handle environmental conditions. But if we want to track, let's say we're in manufacturing, we want to track boxes or a forklift, right? We want to know where certain things are at a certain time on the floor. We can do that with asset tracking within DNA spaces. So, Jake, I'm going to throw you to the lions here. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So I think it's everything that we had just talked about with people. Now it's the same thing translated into what we call things as well. So people and things. And how can we leverage Cisco infrastructure that's in place to deliver outcomes beyond connectivity? Now, in a manufacturing space, or we could say in a healthcare space, many needs to know where items are that can't connect to the network. And so really the framework that we've built and the problem that we're solving with this framework is that previously, to do something like asset tracking or environmental monitoring or machine condition monitoring, it would be built out in a siloed stack. So you want one use case, you're going to deploy some proprietary overlay network, another cable run. You're going to have one vendor's gateways that will only speak to that vendor's BLE devices or BLE tags. And that gateway and those devices will only speak to that vendor's application. So something that works at maybe one floor, two floors, one building, two buildings, but difficult and costly to deploy across an entire organization. Because again, you're doing cable runs and deploying a completely overlaid network. And then to our customers who are in IT, now a lot of times they'll be handed something on their plate that says, we need this deployed, we need it monitored and managed. And so now our customers are deploying an IT or a wireless network and now an overlay, and two places to manage, two places to monitor, and that's for one use case. Now roll out something else of utilization or wayfinding or staff safety, and you can multiply out those stacks pretty quickly. And so what DNA Spaces has done and to solve that is we already have wireless infrastructure that's ubiquitous in their space, right? And so how about we use that infrastructure as a gateway, dynamic gateway that can now manage and configure all different kinds of third-party devices, tags, sensors, beacons, wristbands, badges that will fulfill different kinds of use cases, anything from location to temperature to vibration, you name it, based off of the specific vertical, employee tracking and or visitor tracking in a carpeted workspace. But all of those now can be managed and configured and onboarded through the infrastructure that's already in place. And now, regardless of what vendor device that is, down here on the bottom row, that's going to be able to speak to any application that integrates with DNA Spaces. And so really opens up now a many-to-many framework, gives our customers more flexibility with what use cases they deploy and how they deploy them, and very importantly, how quickly they can deploy them, because now they don't need to go the proprietary stack route. And I think that that's something that now also consolidates down for, they only have one pane of glass to monitor all these different endpoints and the integrations to go to different applications, which really then lowers their total cost of ownership and speeds up their time to value. So it's something, I think it's so easy to talk about location and the value that comes from it with people, but things is just as important, and really solving for a costly issue that many of our customers face across many different verticals.
Yeah, no, those are very good use cases. I mean, whether it's a EKG machine or a big expensive box of gold, I don't know, whatever, right? It's being able to know where it is. And also, if I correct me if I'm wrong here, but you can also set up boundaries. So you can say, hey, this device or this person, right, whatever it is, this asset, this I can't think of the word, it's not token, but this thing cannot go outside of these boundaries. And if it does, generate an alert, right? So that's great for if you have, actually, I have one customer, they're a chemical manufacturing, and they've been customer I've been talking with a lot about this. When they have visitors come over, when we go over to visit them, we got to read through like 8 pages of documentation on where the exits are and the rally points and everything. And we have to sign a bunch of stuff, and it's taken very, very seriously. It's a chemical manufacturing facility. They could possibly have an issue where there's an explosion or whatever, right? So they take safety very seriously, as most, if not all, manufacturing facilities do. But when there's a visitor coming in, right, a person that's not trained, a person that's not allowed to be in certain areas, being able to, as you pointed out, to wayfinding, being able to show them, hey, this is how you get from A to B. And then also alert when they fall outside of that path, or if they're in an area that they're not supposed to be in, that the appropriate people get an alert and they're able to take care of it. On the flip side of that, in the event of an emergency, being able to go into that dashboard and make sure that all those visitors are accounted for and that they're no longer in the building, right? That's another piece too that I've been talking with that customer about. Sean, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I think as far as the asset tracking piece goes, I think really one of the key words and kind of the buzzwords is productivity. And that we can use healthcare as an example, where if a healthcare facility, they need to locate an IV drip and they're not using any kind of asset tracking, they may have hundreds of IV drips floating around a 10-story hospital with a ton of different rooms, ton of different areas. If they have no way to track exactly where that is, they might ask their colleague, hey, where's an IV drip? I don't know where it is. They might ask the doctor, I don't know where it is. And so you can
Right.
imagine the gains in productivity, efficiency, and then not to take it too far, but patient experience and really outcomes as far as healthcare is
Yeah.
concerned, and being able to go grab a vital piece of equipment, locate a bed. Like Jake was mentioned, monitor the temperature, humidity of any kind of different medications or a room where medication is stored, and ultimately an enhancing experience, and like I said, making sure that folks are getting the treatment that they want and they sign up for. So those gains in productivity, and then, you're talking like manufacturing, like you were mentioning, Brian, with a forklift. I talk with customers where they might have forklifts over a, hundred or thousands of square foot factory, and it might take them 2 hours to locate a forklift, 2 hours to locate a vital piece of equipment. But if you
Yeah.
multiply that by 30 guys at their 10 locations, how does that add up in terms of productivity gains and bottom line revenue? So that's some of the things that we kind of try to speak to and extrapolate out when you talk
Right.
about actual outcomes that you can drive using some of this technology.
I'm just reminded of a story. My brother is very gullible, and his first job, he was working at a local like place that does like weddings and events and all that, right? And he's working there, and one of the guys sends him to go look for the cans of blue smoke. he was gone for an hour trying to locate the cans of blue smoke. And then also they got him again. They asked him to get the keys for the hand truck.
Yeah.
Talk about lost productivity there. But I don't think you can't fix stupid. I've got a sign here that says that somewhere. But again, being, as you said, being able to find something that actually does exist that is vital, being able to locate that quickly is important. Tom,
Yeah,
save me
right
here.
now
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
looking to get a BLE tag for the remote in my house,
Oh my,
because I'm losing hours of
yes.
productivity looking for
And
that
you don't have
remote.
kids. You don't have kids. It gets worse when you have kids. All right. Because we all have the same brand TV. So the remote works no matter where, like you go in the room and it works. Right. But then, of course, I'm looking for the remote. My son brought it into his room to use on his TV. I'm like, where's the remote? And everyone's asleep. So I'm not going to wake anyone up to, yeah. No, I'm with you there. I'm about to do the same thing. Tom, anything you want to add there?
No, you guys covered it quite well. The only other thing I would say that I know I had a customer who was looking heavily into DNA spaces, and was really interested in specifically the partnership and relationship we have with Stanley Healthcare. So I don't know if you guys want to talk to that a little bit and how that kind of enhances and takes advantage of the kind of middleman that we act as for that infrastructure. So I don't know who wants to take that, but
Yeah, I'll take that. So I think Stanley, and this can kind of talk through the evolution as well from MSE and CMX into DNA spaces. Obviously, a huge player in healthcare, anything from asset tracking, environmental monitoring, to patient or staff safety, even tracking newborn babies and making sure that they're safe and that they're where they need to be. And kind of hitting again on the benefits of moving to a unified cloud platform for these location use cases. Previously on MSE or CMX, our customers would have been pretty limited in terms of their upgrade capabilities. So if they wanted to upgrade their controller or upgrade their access points, it would need to go kind of follow through Stanley's certification and their matrix on what they support. CMX and MSE, just being on-prem appliances, were a little bit more scale bound and limited there, and there was also no real monitoring and visibility of when that integration were to drop. Now, fast forward to where we are with DNA Spaces now, having worked very, very closely with Stanley to really optimize that integration so that now they're standardizing on DNA Spaces. Doesn't matter what version of controller you're running or what version of code, what model access points you have, but DNA Spaces is going to abstract out all the nuances of those different versions. And so Stanley can just take one stream of data from DNA Spaces. Our customers can now manage their network as they need to. And then also the scale that comes with that. So DNA Spaces can probably track anywhere from 3.5 to 5x the number of devices that MSE or CMX previously would have been tapped out on. And then there's also, like monthly reboots and different advantages that come there, but also very proactive monitoring and alerting that goes into that integration. So now if an integration with a customer's Stanley deployment drops, now Cisco's DevOps is notified, Stanley's notified, and the customer's notified. So rather than waiting a few hours for the customer or a practitioner to realize that they can't find where a critical asset is, now that's going to be caught much sooner, and the issue will be resolved much quicker based off of the intelligence with from the data that's going to the cloud. And I think, Stanley being one of our closest partners, that same framework applies to all of the different partners across our app center, our ecosystem that we've built there, which are very verticalized and very focused partners that will bring in advanced use cases beyond just what us as the middleware would deliver. So, that gets into space occupancy, real estate, facilities management, wayfinding, navigation, all different kinds of vendors there that we work with closely on that data output.
Nice. So a lot of integration points with third parties using APIs. I know there's the Firehose API as well. We got that one customer working together with that project right now. But yeah, so the idea here is that not only have we expanded the capacity of how many devices we can track and whatnot, but now also going back to the theme of playing well with others, right? The integration points with third parties, APIs. There's I might have been you, but there was one person I was talking to where they're like, Cisco does not come out with a new product now unless it has APIs. It has to be full fledged API integration. Here's the points. Here's all the information, so that we can integrate other vendors and can find ways to integrate the information they get out of that to better their product or to better ours, whatever. So it's really good to see that. Really cool to see that.
And I'll just add one more piece to that because I think it's important. So with that Firehose API that we have, we've talked a lot about wireless and how that data be exported out through API. And if we had this conversation a year and a half, 2 years ago, that's where the conversation would have stopped. But our Firehose API now is also multi-sourced. So it's going to include data from wireless, from BLE, from PIR sensors, from Meraki video cameras, from WebEx video endpoints in conference rooms. And so where all this data now now even also as of the last couple of weeks from wired sensors that are supported with our 93 and 9400 switches. So many different types of data that's coming into these different sources now are included in one API out. And so think about what that does, not just for our partners that we're integrating with, because now they only need one stream to ingest and they can rapidly roll out new use cases. But then now also our customers, again, goes back to one pane of glass to manage and to deploy and to monitor any integration that they have set up across multiple different stacks of data and infrastructure. So rather than managing 5 different API streams for your cameras and your WebEx endpoints and your wireless and BLE and your wired sensors, now it's just one going through DNA Spaces, allowing that to really be standardized. So it's a huge call there.
That is impressive.
Sorry, just to jump in here. I think probably the easiest way to explain it is that it's very similar in that of like an iPhone, in that you have the iPhone being your platform. DNA Spaces is that same similar platform, where now if I'm on my iPhone and I want to download my social media, I go to the App Store and download my Instagram. If I want to go on there and download my Candy Crush, I go to the App Store, got my games. And so same thing with DNA Spaces, you can dive into that partner app store, and then that's the way that you're downloading those different partner applications, adding the different use cases and driving the outcomes. So DNA Spaces is that kind of one centralized place, that single pane of glass, like Jake was mentioning. But the ways that you can use it, the outcomes are pretty limitless as far as just jumping into that app store and again, being that one centralized place where now you're using that same infrastructure, same centralized location, same pane of glass to monitor all of these different items and different outcomes.
That is very cool. And I like the analogy there. That's great. So yeah, lots of integration points here. Like everything that we discuss in all of our shows, and all the episodes here, I would highly recommend that if you want to learn more, reach out to your account team. Hopefully you get the opportunity to work with Jake or Sean here to see maybe a demo of it and dive deeper. But really, when you see it, I mean, it's an okay topic to discuss, over a podcast. But of course, the visuals there that you'll see with a demo, are really that's That's where the proof is. So last thing I want to touch on here is infrastructure. I know we've touched on a lot of things already with Meraki, Cisco. It's got the letters DNA in it. So, do we require DNA center? Do we need prime? How big or how small can someone be to get started with DNA spaces? How much do they need?
You want to take
I'll
it,
get it
Sean,
on
or you
you,
want me to?
Jake.
Yeah, so I can take this one.
Oh, good.
So it's pretty dang easy to get started. So the only requirement from an infrastructure perspective is that the person is running controller code 8.0 or above. And with that being said, any of our access points are going to be compatible on that front. And so beyond the kind of flipping the switch of the infrastructure side of things, to get the most functionality of it out of it, you need to be able to import some maps as well. So you had a call out earlier, do we need DNA Center? Generally, maps are going to be imported from either Cisco Prime or Cisco DNA Center. And from there, we're able to use the maps with the APs accurately placed on them to kind of, triangulate location, for lack of a better
Okay.
term. So you're going to need, of course, the infrastructure, and you're going to need to be able to pull in some maps. But one thing I do want to call out is that the setup process is pretty dang simple. I think when people hear Cisco products and maybe they hear the three letters DNA, they think, oh, we're in for a 3-4 week overhaul here, all hands on deck type scenario. But it's really anything but. So I've seen folks that have turned on the entire thing in 15 minutes. Sometimes you need to address some firewall rules, some firewall issues, but generally you can pretty much snap to it, and start getting value out of the program sooner than later.
Nice.
One
I like those
one
easy
piece
buttons.
I'll just add to that too. So it is kind of a good, better, best, right? So if you have Cisco infrastructure 8.0 or above, you can get some meaningful data that will be useful for understanding your space. If you have maps from either Prime or DNA Center, that's going to make the data a little bit more useful and some of the other capabilities. Now, getting into a best or crawl, walk, run, however you want to phrase it, with the new Catalyst 9800 and 9100 access points, that's where we can do all of the different IoT type use cases. And so there is the requirement there. But there's going as far back as 8.0, you can start to make sense of certain pieces of the location data.
Nice. Any integration points with Meraki or?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we work closely with them and are continuing to do so. And so to, work towards complete feature parity across Meraki infrastructure and Catalyst side. But, most of the major use cases we can deploy on Meraki as well.
Nice. As we said already, reach out to your account team. If this is something that you'd like to learn more about. I mean, there's probably a use case that we can fill, right? Obviously, regular, standard corporate office locations are not going to be worried so much about the same thing that retail use cases would be worried about. But especially with the occupancy requirements that you may be facing in your neck of the woods, it's definitely something that you could utilize. And from the sounds of it, and I've seen this happen too, spin up pretty quickly, right? If you're just looking to get a count of people, you're not really necessarily worried about location or hyper location, right? Just getting a count of people, dwell time, stuff like that. That's an easy thing to stand up. As we start, as Jake and Sean mentioned, as you start adding those features, you're going to want a little bit more, but still, there's definitely a use case that I'm sure that that would be fitting for most of our customers that could look into this. So, with that, I think that was all the topics we wanted to discuss.
I had one more thing.
Go ahead,
if you don't mind.
No,
because it's actually it came up on another conversation I've had with a customer, and customers may be thinking this question too. Is going into, let's say, I'm a customer doing another a new wireless refresh, or I'm switching to Cisco and I want to do things right this time, and we're going to get a site survey. Do site surveys vary when you're starting to add location services versus just a standard wireless deployment?
It does, yeah. So it's going to change the density of access points, where the access points are placed. how many of them are, how far apart they are from each other. And there's kind of how we look at it is there's wireless deployment for coverage, and then there's wireless deployments for location. And, that's where we have documentation and guides as well that can help with some of the best practices there, and, trying to position the access points around the outer edges of the buildings and in a honeycomb shape rather than a straight linear line. And so absolutely it does matter. It's not prohibitive if they do just have wireless for coverage. And I think that is the vast majority of our customers. And there's still lots of value and significant data that can come from that. But it would just tweak that level of accuracy on where a device might be. So it's, it comes down to the requirements and the use cases that our customers have, but not prohibitive at all by any means.
Yeah. So my recommendation certainly for, any customers who are interested in this and who are going through, some kind of refresh, and if it's, even if you're working with a partner, a lot of our partners are going to be, cognizant of that. And if you say, hey, I'm looking to do location services, when they do that site survey, then they can tailor, that specific site survey to be, to get you the most out of your, your location services deployment. So,
right. Yeah, no, that's a good call out, Tom, because especially if you're talking, coverage versus location data is a big piece, right? And that'll change all again too, I'm sure, when Wi-Fi 6E and 7 come out and we start introducing the 6 gigahertz spectrum to Wi-Fi. And yeah, just buy more access points, people. Just buy more. You'll need them. You'll need them. You'll use them somewhere, I promise. All right. Thanks for that, Tom. And guys, what we like to do is at the end, we just like to kind of go around and ask if you have any final thoughts or closing arguments. So Jake, I'll start with you.
No, I think you covered it. Reach out if there are other questions or asks. And I think even one more from a demo is standing it up in your own environment and seeing your own data and your own buildings and the data that's coming through there. That's going to be much more impactful than seeing it on a slide or a dummy account that Sean or I can show. But, happy to have those conversations and help get up and running as well so that they can see the power of it for themselves.
I appreciate that. And Sean, you or Mojo have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just one call out, like Jake mentioned, is that we are here to support our customers, in their activation adoption journey. So, part of my role is as customers decide that they want to onboard DNA Spaces, start to utilize some of the technology, get those location analytics going. I work directly with customers, and we also have a technical onboarding team that can kind of coach you through the process, can assist if there's any technical troubleshooting needed. So I just wanted to let everybody know that they're not going to be handed the product and said deal with it. We've got a team over here of specialists that are going to be with you along the way and have your success in mind.
I can personally vouch for that because I'm seeing it right now. When we ran into some trouble, as would be expected, the support team has been phenomenal. So yes, that I can personally vouch for that. There's a lot of support that will be there along the way for the demo. There's Mojo.
And here's our guy. He's not too happy. I think it's past lunchtime for him. So
oh boy,
he's gonna have something to say.
That was the thumbnail. That was the thumbnail to the video right there.
All right. Well, I think there's no other better note to end on than that. So thank you, Jake. Thank you, Sean, for joining us today. And thank you for listening to ConfT or watching ConfT with URSC. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those fun social media things that I'm getting too old to remember now. And we'll join us here for our next episode. Not sure what the topic's going to be on yet, but it'll be another good one. So thanks again. Be safe out there, and don't forget to save that config.